Well, in the words of Hastings, right, big fellas, none of your guff now, OK? DS Corbett, who was undercover there, because that's what a lot of this is about. Mark Cannoner is a serving DS, as it turns out, and Peter Blexley, former undercover detective. And Peter, I thought I knew you through many things, but I did not know the extent of your undercover life within the force. And indeed, when you watch something like that and how edgy Corbett's existence is, playing an undercover, deep-bedded undercover officer, you've been there.
For over 10 years, I was there. Guns, drugs, plots to murder, and much, much more. And whilst I was young and fearless in those days, it was adrenaline-pumping, high-octane, frankly, often terrifying work.
You chose to become an undercover officer?
Oh, yes.
Because you thought, what, would be exciting, or you really thought, I can
well, when I first
infiltrate these gangs and bring them to justice?
Yeah, when I first went to Scotland Yard, I watched how the undercover cops were currently doing it, and I thought, quite frankly, I can do better than that. They were a bit stuck in their ways, and of course we're now talking about the 80s and the 90s when I was undercover, and of course organised crime was moving on, and the bad guys were getting very good at being able to suss out whether somebody was an undercover cop or not. So we needed to really rewrite the rule book.
See, the thing is, as we have seen in various dramas, I don't want to say too more, the bad guys are very good at sussing out and exterminating people who they don't like. Why on earth would you want a job like that?
Because I was young, fearless and probably foolish, and I thought I was on the side of the angels, doing the right thing. And, of course, I was a very good liar, which is a prerequisite for working undercover.
I mean, Mark, you're currently serving a detective sergeant. How, without giving too much away, how much of this undercover work is going on within the police force today?
Well, I think that's really, that's Peter's realm, as it were. But what I couldn't say is, in terms of the realism of the programme, how realistic is it? It's an entertainment programme. You know, people will be turning off in
Watch yourself here, fella.
I mean, I'm a fan. You know, I want to know every week, those cliffhangers, what happens next. But it's entertainment, and people would be turning off in their droves if they had to deal with or see what we have to deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah,
well, as in it's not as exciting as
absolutely. I mean,
what we're looking at there is this unit called AC12, anti-corruption. Do such units exist?
Absolutely. Every police force has the equivalent of AC12, a professional standards department, an internal department which investigates any form of corruption, and it's recognised there will be corruption in any organisation. But the key thing is here, like AC12, we have professionals who will diligently investigate any wrongdoing, and they will prosecute people accordingly.
Organised crime groups, Peter, we hear a lot about that on Line of Duty. So you were deeply undercover with some very dangerous people. Give us an example of the kind of people you were dealing with.
Oh, people that were operating at the very, very highest echelons of criminality, and it was my job to turn them from organised into disorganised by feeding back all the intelligence that I was gaining by spending so much time in their company. And on one such occasion, the bad guy says, I'm going to take you to a restaurant that I know very well. It was in a basement, and as we walked down the steps, there was this enormous bouncer on the door, and as I walked past, a new face, he just held the lapel of his jacket open a little bit just so I could see the gun he was carrying.
Right.
We went down into the restaurant, sat at a table, and to my absolute horror, one of the waitresses was a woman that I had arrested months before when I was a detective as opposed to an undercover detective. So there I am. I've got a guy on the door with a gun, I'm surrounded by bad guys, and there's a waitress who actually knows I'm a real cop.
If she'd have blown your cover, that would have been curtains for you, do you think?
Goodness only knows what might have happened. So as she approached our table, I shrunk into my shoulder, put my hand up, and when she said, what do you want to drink? I just said, yeah, one of those.
Well, it has, I mean, without minimising this at all, it has affected you. You've been stabbed, you've had mental health issues as a result of all of this. Not surprisingly, Mark, with all of this. And in line of duty, one of the things we see for the undercover officers is the effects it has on their family as well.
I think not just undercover officers, but any police officer. You bring your work home, unfortunately. We are exposed to a wealth of traumatic, horrific incidents, and we need to programme ourselves to deal with those in whatever way we can. So often we will offload that on our families, so they bear the burden of policing equally.
Let me ask both of you, who is H? Who do you think H is? H is in the series. There's a mole within the police. There's an informer within the police. There's corruption within the police, and it's codenamed H. Do you have a guess of who H is?
Is it a person or is it a place?
Ooh.
Cast your mind back to the flats where people were being held.
Yes.
One was flat B, wasn't it? Just putting it out there.
You see, I will look at it from an evidential perspective. I will still have my police head on, thinking who H could be. So I'm going to reserve judgment through nothing more than humiliation if I'm wrong.
You never live that one down.
Yeah,
would you?
indeed.
What about the word definitely being typed incorrectly? Any clue? Any
Well,
evidence?
you've analysed this more than I have, Eamonn, clearly, because I've missed that point.
Well, I don't understand half of it, but I just love it. You know, the OCG and the A34 and the 312.
Up the M5.
Up the
Yeah,
M5.
well,
Anyway, I shouldn't say it's up there. If it's all filmed in Belfast, no, it's never named, but it's all Belfast. Very, very
Well,
great.
listen,
for
it's fascinating
Excuse
to
me,
see
I'm
them-
promoting Belfast.
Oh, yeah, I heard you.
Excuse
Hello,
me
Belfast.
for you.
Hello, Belfast.
This is an amazing thing to Belfast film industry
Yes.
There. So
It
that's
does.
it.
It
Thank
is.
you.
Indeed.
Now over to you.
No, I was just going to say it's fascinating to hear the real life side of that story. Thank you very
Guys,
much.
great.
Good to see you.
Great tales to tell.